A grieving black mother demanded justice. A retired civil rights attorney returned to the courtroom for one final battle. But when she faced the young lawyer leading the defense, she realized he wasn't just her opponent. He was her past. Now the truth she carries could destroy a system built on silence. But will the cost of revealing it be more than she's willing to pay? If you believe in justice, truth, and stories that shine a light on what others try to keep hidden, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who still believes change is possible. Now, take a breath. Because what you're about to hear is not just a story. It's a reckoning. The boy sat stiff in the wooden pew, shoes too polished, shirt too tight, 12 years old, and already learning how the world treated black families who didn't own enough, speak loud enough, or matter enough. His mother sat beside him, trembling as the white landlord's lawyer demanded they vacate their home within 7 days. They'd fallen behind. One missed paycheck after the factory cut hours. The lawyer called it a breach of contract. The boy just called it life. Then she entered. A woman in her 60s, silver hair swept neatly into a bun, calm eyes behind square glasses. She carried no briefcase, just a single folder, and a quiet kind of power that made everyone sit up straighter. Her name was Eleanor Washington. She didn't raise her voice, she didn't point fingers, but when she spoke, even the judge leaned in. She cited precedent, questioned motive, highlighted the discrimination buried beneath neutral policy. She painted the boy's mother not as a debtor, but as a working woman surviving a system stacked against her. And she won. The boy never forgot that day. Not because they kept their home, but because someone, for once, stood up for them. Her voice had been steady, her words exact. And when they passed her on the courthouse steps, she bent down to his level, looked him in the eyes and said, "The law won't love you, son. But if you're smart, careful, and brave, one day, maybe you can make it fair." 20 years later, that boy now stood in front of a mirror in the courthouse bathroom, adjusting a silk tie that cost more than his mother's monthly rent. Ethan Brooks, age 32. The youngest partner at Patterson & Wells. The golden boy of police defense litigation. His jawline was sharp, his suit flawless, his smile just the right mix of charm and superiority. And today's case? Just another chance to prove he knew how the game was played. Another lawsuit, another grieving black family, another narrative to dismantle. He smirked. "They always want someone to blame," he whispered to his reflection. "And I'm always the one who makes that go away." He didn't know yet. He didn't know that the opposing counsel, quiet, composed, far too old in his eyes to be a threat, was none other than Eleanor Washington. The woman who once saved his family was about to try and destroy everything he stood for. And the worst part? She wouldn't even need to raise her voice. The courthouse lobby buzzed with tension, reporters, security guards, and a dozen murmured conversations bouncing off the marble walls like ghosts of past trials. Ethan Brooks strolled through the metal detectors without slowing down, the guards waving him through like he was royalty. His tailored coat fluttered behind him like a cape. He liked that. Every step he took echoed with confidence. He glanced at the crowd gathered by Courtroom B, spotted the opposing counsel's table, and smirked. No sign of the attorney yet. He leaned over to his assistant and whispered, just loud enough for the nearby reporters to catch. Probably some bleeding heart civil rights lawyer with a law degree from the 60s and a Rolodex full of expired contacts. The reporters chuckled, cameras clicked. Ethan adjusted his cufflinks. "I'll have this wrapped before lunch." Across town, in a modest brick home with chipped paint and a garden that once bloomed brighter than the sun, Lisa Wallace stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her blouse for the third time. Her hands trembled. Not because of vanity, but because today was the first day her brother's name would be spoken in court. Not as a suspect, not as a statistic, but as a human being. Behind her, Margaret Wallace, her mother, sat at the kitchen table, flipping slowly through a weathered Bible. Her face bore the gentle lines of years lived hard but never bitter. Lisa turned. "Mama, what if they tear him apart in there? What if they say things we can't fight back against?" Margaret didn't look up. She just placed her hand over the Bible and said, "They already took him from us, baby. All that's left now is his truth. And the truth can fight for itself, if we're brave enough to carry it." Lisa wiped her eyes and nodded. Then came the knock, a soft, steady rhythm on the door, unrushed, unshaken. Margaret rose first, and there she stood. Eleanor Washington. Not in the courtroom yet, but here, in the place where justice always starts, a grieving family's home. She wore a deep navy coat, buttoned at the collar. Her hair was pulled back into its usual bun. Her eyes, as always, said more than her lips ever did. She carried no files, no briefcase, only a slim leather folder held close to her chest. Lisa stared. "You're her?" she whispered. "The one Reverend Mitchell said fought the city and won more than once." Eleanor smiled, a flicker of warmth through her otherwise still demeanor. "I've fought a few fights, lost some, won some, but this one matters." Margaret motioned her in, clearing the table instinctively. Eleanor sat with the grace of someone who had spent her life sitting across from power, and never blinking. She opened the folder, revealing photos, documents, printouts. But what she said first wasn't legal. It was human. They'll paint Terrence as a threat. They'll dig through his past, twist his name, question his value, and they'll do it with a smile. She paused. Our job is not just to prove the facts, it's to remind them he was loved, that his life had weight. Lisa swallowed hard. "Can we win this?" Eleanor closed the folder. "That depends. Are you ready to stop being afraid of their lies and start standing for your truth?" Back at the courthouse, Ethan Brooks checked his watch. The bailiff called the case number. The courtroom doors opened, and as he turned, preparing his trademark smirk, Eleanor Washington walked in. Straight-backed, silent, imposing. Ethan's face didn't change, but his eyes flickered. Just for a moment, like a memory stirred, like something he'd buried was trying to rise. The marble hallway outside courtroom B smelled faintly of old polish and fresh coffee, like justice trying to clean itself up for company. Ethan Brooks leaned one shoulder against a column, surrounded by a few junior associates and a local news crew. He was holding court, in every sense of the phrase. "They brought her out of retirement for this?" he said with a smirk. "What's the plan? Guilt the jury into submission? Maybe she'll knit them scarves while she's at it." The interns chuckled. The cameraman didn't blink. "Eleanor Washington," Ethan continued, shaking his head. "I thought she was living in Florida, tending roses. Guess she couldn't resist one more shot at the glory days." At that moment, the heavy courtroom doors creaked open. Eleanor Washington stepped into the hall, calm, upright, unmoved. Her eyes swept the corridor once, not with fear but with memory. She had walked halls like this when juries were all white and black clients were told to lower their tone. This was nothing new. She walked past Ethan slowly. He turned toward her, voice raised just enough for the cameras to catch. "Miss Washington," he said, all sugar and condescension, "do you need help finding the courtroom? I hear the memory goes after 70. She stopped, turned. Her eyes landed on him like falling snow, soft but cold. "Mr. Brooks," she replied, her voice smooth and steady. "The last time I was in this building, you were 12, watching your mother cry in the third row. You didn't need help finding the courtroom then." The hallway fell silent. Even the camera stopped moving. Ethan's smile froze for half a second. Just half. Eleanor nodded gently. "I look forward to hearing your arguments and to showing you how much you've forgotten." Then she walked on. Lisa Wallace had just stepped out of the gallery with a folder in her arms when she witnessed the whole exchange. She hadn't expected much from this woman her mother trusted so deeply. Old lawyers, in her experience, spoke in circles and clung to dusty files. But now she watched Eleanor glide through a gauntlet of stares and whispers like Moses parting the Red Sea. Not with fury, not with fear, just with presence. Lisa felt her own spine straighten. Maybe this wasn't about surviving the storm after all. Maybe it was about becoming the storm. She tightened her grip on the folder and turned to follow. Back by the column, Ethan let out a slow breath and muttered under his breath. "Cute, she's got bite. Let's see if she still has teeth." But deep down, just for a moment, he felt something he hadn't expected. Not fear, not yet, just recognition. A voice from a long-forgotten memory. "The law won't love you, son, but maybe one day you can make it fair." He shook it off. There was a case to win, and a legacy to protect, even if it meant burying the truth to do it. Inside the courthouse evidence room, the air was cold, too cold, and smelled faintly of bleach and cardboard. Eleanor Washington stood at the metal counter, gloved fingers flipping through the official logbook. Her lips were pressed into a thin line. "Body cam footage," she said quietly. "There's no entry for it here." The clerk shrugged. "If it didn't upload, it doesn't exist. Maybe it malfunctioned." Eleanor looked up. 3 officers, 3 cameras, all malfunctioned. The same night? The clerk looked away. "You'll have to talk to the department." Eleanor closed the file. Slowly. "Oh, I intend to." That evening at the Wallace home, Lisa sat cross-legged on the floor of her brother's old room. The light from the bedside lamp cast soft shadows on the posters still clinging to the walls. Terrence's favorite basketball team, his college acceptance letter, a picture of him and Lisa grinning with ice cream cones in hand. She opened the box of his belongings, the one they gave her after the investigation closed. Phone, cracked. Wallet, empty. 1 chain necklace, slightly bent, and a sticky note. 1 word scrawled in Terrence's handwriting. Backup. Followed by a string of characters. Lisa stared at it, her nurse's mind racing. Terrence had always been cautious, always paranoid about losing data. He once told her, "Everything I care about is saved twice. 1 on the drive, 1 in the cloud." She opened his old laptop, password protected. She stared at the sticky note again and typed. The screen blinked, then opened. At that same hour, Ethan Brooks sat in his luxury apartment with the city lights flickering through the tall windows. He poured himself a drink, loosened his tie, and checked his phone. 2 missed calls from the firm. 1 voicemail from the police liaison. He pressed play. The voice was low, urgent. "Brooks, you need to start taking this seriously. Washington's not just some nostalgia act. She took down Judge Hanley in '98, got a police chief fired in 2004. If she's on this case, you're not defending a department. You're defending the whole damn system." A pause, and she doesn't miss. Ethan exhaled through his teeth. He remembered hearing about Hanley, the judge forced into early retirement after Washington exposed backroom deals with prosecutors. He remembered reading about the civil rights suit she built like a fortress, brick by brick, until it buried half a precinct. He tossed back the rest of his drink and stood. "Fine," he muttered. "If she wants a war, she'll get one." Back at the Wallace home, Lisa stared at the screen. The folder was there, labeled, "For Lisa if something happens." Her breath caught in her throat as she opened it. Inside, photos, screenshots, time-stamped notes, and a short video clip. The sound was grainy, the angle tilted, but the image was unmistakable. 3 officers, in uniform, standing behind a grocery store dumpster, exchanging something with a man in plain clothes, laughing. Then the camera shook, like someone had bumped the phone. A voice whispered, "No one's gonna believe this, man." And then, suddenly the footage stopped. Lisa's hand trembled over the trackpad. Terrence had seen something, had captured something, and then he died. She picked up the phone with shaking fingers and called Eleanor. "Miss Washington," she said, voice low, urgent. "I found it. I think this is why they killed him." Across town, Ethan made a call of his own. "This case isn't clean anymore," he told the chief. "She's digging, and the girl, she's not as quiet as we thought." The voice on the other end was colder than the night air. "Then clean it up," Ethan hesitated. "And if she gets too close?" A long pause. "Then, you know what to do." The call came just after midnight. Eleanor had been up late, reviewing deposition records by the light of a single desk lamp, her reading glasses perched low on her nose. The voice on the other end was strained, breathless. "Miss Washington, it's Taylor, Officer David Taylor. I need to talk. I can't carry this anymore." She sat up straighter. "Are you safe?" "No, that's why I'm calling. I have files, real ones, internal reports, body cam backups. I hid them, kept them from the department. But they know I'm talking to someone. Please, meet me at the courthouse steps tomorrow morning." Before the hearing, she hesitated. "David, be careful. Don't come alone. They've already followed me once this week. If anything happens, tell the truth. That's all that matters." The line went dead. The next morning, the courthouse plaza bustled with early reporters and slow-moving fog. But David Taylor never arrived. Instead, a scream broke the air. Sharp, sudden, then sirens. Eleanor stepped out just in time to see a black sedan speed away from the curb, tires screeching. On the concrete near the fountain, David lay motionless, a spreading pool of red beneath his shoulder. She pushed through the crowd, but the paramedics were already there, too late. One of them looked up at her and shook his head. Single shot. Professional. Eleanor didn't speak. She just stood there, coat fluttering in the wind, watching as they zipped the body bag shut over the man who had risked everything to speak the truth and paid the ultimate price. Later that evening, she stood at the back of a small chapel on the city's south side. The funeral was quiet. Just a few officers who still had a conscience, a sister from out of town, and Eleanor, alone. She didn't approach the casket. Instead, she walked to a side altar, where a framed photo of David stood next to a flickering candle. Beside it, someone had placed an old newspaper clipping. Eleanor Washington wins landmark case against corrupt task force 1992. She stared at the yellowed paper, at her own younger face, standing beside a man with kind eyes and a brave smile. Her husband. He too had died not long after that case. A heart attack, they said. But she had never believed it. Some truths, they said, were just too dangerous to live with. Eleanor reached out and touched the edge of the photo, then with trembling fingers lit another candle beside his. 2 flames now, flickering in silence, but refusing to go out. Back at the Wallace home, Lisa sat on the couch, phone in hand, watching the breaking news. Officer turned whistleblower shot outside courthouse. She didn't speak, didn't blink, just watched. Margaret placed a hand on her daughter's back, but Lisa barely felt it. Her chest ached in places words couldn't reach. She had seen Taylor once at a meeting with Eleanor. He had been nervous but kind, honest, broken, but still brave. And now, he was gone, because he tried to help them. They killed him, Lisa whispered. Just like they killed Terrence, just like they threatened us. Her voice cracked. But they don't get to win again. She stood up, fists clenched, tears falling freely now, not from fear, but from fury. I'm done hiding, done being quiet. Whatever Eleanor needs, I'm in. Margaret looked at her daughter, shoulders shaking, eyes full of fire. And for the first time in a very long time, she saw Terrence in her. Not in the pain, but in the courage. The street was quiet. Too quiet. Lisa gripped the steering wheel of her rusted sedan, eyes flicking between the road and the rearview mirror. The dark SUV had been behind her for the last 6 blocks, keeping distance, but never turning off. She tried to shake it, making 3 quick turns in a row, one of the tricks Eleanor had taught her. But the SUV followed, closer now. Her heart pounded. Her breath shortened. She fumbled for her phone. No signal. Then the headlights surged forward. The SUV sped up, too fast for a normal tail. It swerved behind her, then to the side, boxing her in. Lisa panicked. She turned the wheel hard right, onto a side alley. But the road was slick, too slick. The tires screamed as the car skidded sideways, straight toward a brick wall. She braced herself, but before the crash, another car cut across the alley. Sleek, fast. It wedged itself between her and the SUV, forcing the tailing car to swerve violently and hit a trash bin with a loud metallic crunch. The SUV reversed fast and disappeared. Lisa sat frozen in her seat, breathing hard. The door of the rescue car opened, and out stepped Ethan Brooks. He didn't look smug this time. No smirk, no courtroom swagger. Just a man in a long coat, breathing heavily, visibly shaken. "Are you all right?" he asked, walking toward her window. Lisa stared at him, wide-eyed. "You? What are you doing here?" "Saw the car following you," he said quickly. "Knew it wasn't yours. And I don't like ambushes outside of court." She didn't answer. He looked around, checking the corners, watching for movement. Then added, quieter, "This case isn't just a trial anymore. Someone's turning it into a war." "So you saved me?" Lisa said, voice shaking, half disbelieving. "Because you care about justice?" "No," he replied. "Because I care about winning. But I don't win like that." He stepped back. "Tell your lawyer I said this. Next move's hers. But I want it fair. No shadows." He turned to walk away, but then Lisa opened her door and stepped out. The light from the nearby street lamp caught something on her hand. A silver cross hanging from a thin chain, curled tightly in her fist. Ethan stopped, stared. "That cross," he murmured. "Where did you get that?" Lisa looked confused. "My brother gave it to me, last birthday. It used to be Mom's." Ethan blinked as if the night shifted around him. He remembered. That day in court, the old apartment. The woman with the silver cross around her neck, gripping her son's hand. The one who had defended them, protected them, changed everything. "Eleanor," he whispered, barely audible. "Washington." Lisa took a step forward. "You knew her?" Ethan didn't answer. He just looked down, at the cross, then back at Lisa. For the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, only something older, Something cracked, something that looked almost like regret. Back in her apartment, Lisa told Eleanor everything. The chase, the SUV, the sudden rescue. Eleanor listened carefully, then asked, "You trust him?" Lisa hesitated. "No, but I don't think he's as sure of himself as he used to be." Eleanor nodded slowly. That's how all cracks start, one shaken belief at a time. And somewhere in the dark, in a sleek black car, Ethan Brooks sat alone, replaying the moment in the alley. Not the danger, not the chase, but the cross. And the woman who wore it, the one who had once saved his future, and was now trying to take it back. The video was short, just under 2 minutes, but it was enough to burn down a system. Lisa watched it in silence, heart pounding in her chest. The screen showed a dim alley behind the grocery store, partially lit by a flickering lamppost. 3 uniformed officers stood with a man in plain clothes, laughter, low voices. Then an exchange, plastic bags, rolled up bills, and a handshake that looked more like a pact. One of the officers stepped forward, face briefly lit by the passing headlights. It was Sergeant James Miller. Lisa hit pause, froze the frame. There he was, smiling, at ease, caught. She didn't call Eleanor right away. Instead, she backed up the file, twice. One on a flash drive she hid under her dresser. The other, she uploaded to a private cloud folder labeled Bible Notes, knowing no one would ever look there. Then she called Eleanor. At her office, Eleanor listened quietly as Lisa described what she found. Her fingers wrapped tighter around her coffee mug with every word. "If we present that in court," she said, voice low, "we don't just win this case. We tear a hole in everything they've been trying to protect for decades." Lisa nodded. "Then we present it." "We will," Eleanor promised, "but only when the timing leaves them no room to bury it." She stood and walked to her bookshelf, pulling down an old leather-bound binder, the kind lawyers kept not for law, but for war. Inside, she began adding notes, timelines, evidence chains, but she never got to finish. That night, while Eleanor stepped out for a meeting with a federal contact, her office was broken into. No forced entry, no alarms tripped, just emptiness where files had once been. Her desk drawers were open, her cabinet of sealed evidence folders wiped clean. Her computer's hard drive removed completely. The only thing untouched was a photo on her desk, her and her husband at a protest march, arms linked, smiles wide. She walked in and stopped cold, then calmly called Detective Chen. "They've made their move," she said. "It's time I make mine." Meanwhile, Lisa sat in the dark on the edge of her bed. She had seen the news. Burglary at civil rights attorney's office. They called it a random act of vandalism, but she knew better. They were trying to silence the case, erase the proof, bury the truth. She got up quietly, walked to the dresser, and pulled out the flash drive. Then she stared at it for a long time. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from responsibility. Across town, in a smoky office lit only by the blue glow of a laptop, Ethan Brooks stared at a grainy still image from the video Lisa had uncovered. One of his interns had found a backup buried in the system logs. Ethan hadn't told the department yet. He just sat there, watching the officer's face in the frame. Miller, the man he was defending, the man he had vouched for. He poured himself another drink, but this time the scotch didn't go down as smooth. Because this wasn't about clever arguments anymore. This was about truth, and what kind of man you became when you tried to kill it. The courtroom was packed, every seat filled, every breath held. Reporters lined the back wall. Activists in black shirts sat shoulder to shoulder, and in the front row, Margaret Wallace clutched her Bible so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Eleanor stood tall at the prosecution table, but her mind was still racing from the night before. Her ransacked office, the missing files, the chilling message etched into her wall. Silence is survival. But today, they would speak. She stepped forward, voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, we ask to begin with a statement from the family." Judge Whitman nodded, his expression unreadable. Lisa rose from her seat. For a moment, she seemed too small for the courtroom, just a young woman in her brother's shadow. But when she stepped forward, holding the flash drive in one hand and a photograph of Terrence in the other, she became unshakable. "This is what my brother died for," she said, voice trembling but steady. Not for politics, not for headlines, just for someone to finally tell the truth. She plugged in the flash drive. The screen lit up, and the room fell silent. The video began with static, then movement, Terrence's breath heavy and fast as he crouched behind the grocery store dumpster. Through the lens of his phone, they saw what he saw. 3 officers, Miller among them, bags of white powder, cash, laughter. Then someone turned, spotted him. The camera shook violently. A shout, a scuffle, then darkness. The last sound was Terrence's voice, barely a whisper. "Tell my sister, stay strong." When the screen faded to black, no one moved. Eleanor's eyes brimmed with tears, but not just for what they'd lost, for the courage of a brother and the strength of a sister who refused to let him be forgotten. The judge turned, stunned. The gallery murmured like a wave about to crash, and then Ethan Brooks stood up. He didn't glance at the officers behind him, didn't reach for his notes. He just stared across the courtroom, straight at Eleanor. "You stood up for me once," he said, voice raw. "When I was a kid, when my family had no one. You told me the law was meant to protect the weak, that it could be better." His hands trembled, but I stopped believing that somewhere along the way. I traded justice for wins. He looked down at his watch, then slowly took it off, placing it on the table like shedding a false skin. Then back at the judge. "Your Honor, I can't defend this anymore." He turned to the gallery. "They paid me to bury this case. The department, the firm, they buried evidence, silenced witnesses, threatened lives." He nodded toward Lisa, but she didn't run, neither did Miss Washington. "And maybe it's time I stopped running too." Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked like 1,000 tiny hammers breaking the wall of silence. Judge Whitman leaned forward, voice tight. "Mr. Brooks, are you admitting to willful suppression of evidence?" "Yes, sir," Ethan said without flinching, "and I'm ready to face whatever comes with that." Then he turned once more, to Eleanor. Their eyes met, and for a long second they weren't a weary old lawyer and a broken protege. They were 2 people who had once believed in the same thing, and maybe could again. In the front row, Margaret whispered a single word, "Amen." And Lisa? Lisa didn't cry, she just stood taller. Because the truth was out, and it had finally spoken in her brother's voice. The courtroom was quieter now. The storm had passed, but the wreckage still stood. Ethan Brooks sat in handcuffs at the defense table, head lowered, suit rumpled, no longer the golden boy of Patterson and Wells. As the bailiffs led him away, he didn't resist. He just glanced back at Eleanor and gave the smallest of nods, half apology, half gratitude. She watched him go, expression unreadable. Because justice, she knew, didn't always come clean, but sometimes it still came. Sergeant James Miller stood before the judge, face pale, jaw clenched. The jury had spoken, guilty on all counts: abuse of power, tampering with evidence, conspiracy, murder. When asked if he had anything to say before sentencing, he only scoffed. "I was doing my job." Judge Whitman stared down at him. "Then God help the city you served." Life without parole. No one in the gallery clapped, no one cheered. Because justice wasn't a celebration, it was a reckoning. In the weeks that followed, the ripples spread wider. Whistleblower officers were investigated, some reinstated, others forced out. One of them, Detective James Chen, the young officer who had helped Eleanor behind the scenes, was among those let go. No public explanation, just a short notice and a stripped badge. He packed his things in silence, then turned to Eleanor on the courthouse steps. "I guess there's no place for honesty in a system built on silence." Eleanor took his hand, firm and steady. "Maybe not in their system, but we're building a new one." He smiled, tired but hopeful. "Let me know where to report, ma'am." Months passed, investigations were opened, policies changed, names cleared, others indicted, and somewhere between it all, a name once whispered in pain became a rallying cry. Terrence Wallace. At Metro Medical University, the graduation hall was filled with white coats and proud families. Lisa Wallace stepped onto the stage, her stethoscope gleaming, her curls pulled back, her eyes shining. When it was her turn to speak, the room quieted. She took a breath, held a worn silver cross between her fingers. "My brother used to bring me dollar store flowers after my exams," she began. "He said I was going to be the first Wallace with a doctorate. He worked late shifts, gave up weekends, took punches for me." Her voice caught, but she didn't stop. "He wanted me to heal people. He didn't know he healed the world." The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then applause rose, slow, then steady. Not just for the graduate, but for the journey. That evening, Eleanor stood at the back of the auditorium, watching Lisa receive her diploma. She didn't wave, didn't approach, just smiled, quietly, because her fight was almost done, and now it was someone else's turn. The office was quiet now. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, catching dust in its golden beams. Bookshelves, once overflowing with case files and handwritten notes, now stood mostly bare. Eleanor Washington stood in the center of the room, a single box in her arms, her worn leather briefcase resting by the door. She walked slowly to her desk, her battlefield for over 40 years, and placed the final folder down. On top of it sat a note and a set of keys. Lisa stepped into the doorway, still in her white coat from the clinic, eyes bright with something between reverence and uncertainty. Eleanor turned to her with a small smile. "Come in," she said. "It's yours now." Lisa walked slowly across the room, her gaze drifting to the framed newspaper on the wall. Civil rights attorney wins landmark case. And beside it, a photo of Terrence beaming in his graduation cap. Her breath caught. Eleanor noticed. She reached for the folder. "These," she said, handing it over, "are notes from every case I never finished. Every name I couldn't clear, every voice I promised I'd still fight for." Lisa hesitated, then took it. The weight was real. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she said quietly. Eleanor smiled. "Neither was I the first time, or the second, or the 100th. But you show up, you speak up, and eventually you become the voice others needed all along." She paused. "The fight isn't over, but I know it's in good hands now." They stood there a moment, 2 generations, one purpose. Then Eleanor picked up her briefcase, gave one last look around, and walked out. Not as a warrior in retreat, but as a torchbearer who had passed the flame. Weeks later, a new nameplate was installed on the office door. Lisa Wallace, civil rights advocate. The reception desk had changed. The paint was fresher, but the heart of the space remained. And at the end of the hallway, in a frame under soft lighting, hung a single photograph. Terrence Wallace, still smiling, still watching, still remembered. Outside, the city moved on, but something was different. People asked more questions, demanded more answers, protested less in silence and more in song, because someone had cracked the wall, and others had stepped through. In her new office, Lisa sat at her desk reviewing the name of her next client, a mother from the East Side. Her son had been stopped and searched without cause. Same story, different day. She opened her notebook. "Let's begin," she whispered. Then turned to look at her brother's photo. They buried his body. She smiled softly, a fire flickering behind her eyes. But not his truth. If this story moved you, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss another powerful story like this one. Your support means the world to us, and it gives our team the motivation to keep creating meaningful, high-quality content that inspires change. Thank you for being part of this journey.